Hey guys, welcome back to more Ripe Stories. In today's r/ohnoconsequences story, a wealthy couple moved next to my farm and hated everything about it. The cows, the smells, the tractors at dawn, so they decided to steal a part of my driveway while I was away. What happened next made their expensive house impossible to live in. Let's dive right into the story. And the first one is titled, "They Stole My Driveway, so I Showed Them Why You Don't Mess with Farmers." This happened in Cambodia. I know most of the stories on here are from the US or Europe, but trust me, entitled people exist everywhere on this planet. And the ones I dealt with were some of the worst I've ever encountered. A little background on me first. I've been farming in Siem Reap province for most of my adult life. My family has owned land out here for generations. We grow rice during the wet season, raise cattle, do some vegetables on the side, and sell at the local markets. It is honest work and it keeps my family fed. My wife and I built our house on the property ourselves. It is nothing luxurious, just a concrete block house with a tin roof, but it is ours and we are proud of it. Now, the way our property is set up is important for this story. Our farm sits along a dirt road that connects to the main road about 2 kilometers out. When I say dirt road, I mean an actual proper road that the commune maintains, wide enough for trucks and motorbikes and all the farm equipment you would expect in rural Cambodia. Our driveway branches off this road and runs along the edge of our property for a good stretch before reaching our house and the area where we keep equipment and park the cattle truck. That driveway is critical to our operation. Without it, we cannot get the rice to the market, cannot bring in supplies, and cannot move the cattle. It's the lifeline of the whole farm. For years, the land next to ours sat empty. It belonged to some family in Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia and the largest city in the country in case you didn't know, who bought it as an investment but never developed it. We never had any issues, and then about 2 years ago, a new family bought that land and started building a house on it. I'll call them the city couple because that's exactly what they were. They also came from Phnom Penh with money from some kind of import business, showed up for the first time in a black Lexus SUV that probably cost more than every vehicle in our village combined, and they decided they wanted a countryside villa. You know the type, they wanted a peaceful rural life but with air conditioning, a satellite dish, and zero tolerance for anything that actually comes with living next to a working farm. The house they built was massive by local standards. 2 stories high, painted bright white, huge tiled patio out front. It stuck out among the wooden houses and farms in our area, but hey, it is their land, they can build what they want, right? I went over and introduced myself when they moved in. The husband barely acknowledged me, didn't even shake my hand, just sort of looked me up and down and nodded. The wife was standing behind him, fanning herself and looking around at the surrounding farms like she had just stepped into a zoo. "So, you're the farmer, huh?" the husband said, not a question, a statement, like he was identifying what species I was. And I told him yes, I farm rice and raise cattle, and if they ever needed anything or had questions about the area, they could ask me. He said, "We will need you to keep the noise down in the mornings. We are not used to roosters and tractors at 5 a.m. I just smiled and said the roosters don't really take requests from me. He didn't think that was funny. The first few months were mostly fine though. They kept to themselves, we kept to ourselves, but I started noticing some little things. The wife would stand on their patio and make disgusted faces whenever I drove the cattle past. The husband complained to other neighbors about the smell of the farm. Normal farm smells. Cows exist. They produce smells. This is not breaking news if you choose to live in rural Cambodia." But then the driveway situation started. It began with the husband walking along the edge of my driveway one morning, hands behind his back, studying the ground, like he was conducting some kind of investigation. I was loading rice bags onto the truck, and I saw him pacing back and forth, looking at where my driveway met the boundary between our properties. "Can I help you?" I called out. He walked over with this look on his face. He was looking confident. It's like he had already made a decision and was just about to inform me of it. "This section here," he said, pointing to the strip of my driveway closest to his property, "I think this actually extends onto my land." I told him it didn't. I told him my family has had this driveway in the exact same spot for longer than either of us has been alive. The boundaries were established decades ago. He shook his head slowly, like I was just a kid who didn't understand math. "I had someone take a look," he said. "The measurements suggest your driveway encroaches onto my property by at least 3 meters. "Who took a look?" I asked. "A friend of mine, he understands these things." A friend. Not a surveyor, not a government land office, a friend who understands these things. I told him he was welcome to get an official survey done through the local land office if he wanted, but I was confident in our boundaries. He gave me that same dismissive nod from before and then walked away. A week later, I came home from the market to find 3 plastic traffic barriers placed along the edge of my driveway, the kind you see at construction sites on the national highways. Brand new, bright orange, totally out of place on a dirt farm road, not on his property by the way, on mine, lined up in a neat little row about 3 meters inside my land, like he had drawn a new property line with road barriers. I picked them up and set them on his side, didn't throw them, just moved them. The next morning they were back, same spots, I moved them again, they came back again. This went on for about 2 weeks. My wife started calling it the cone war. I figured he would get tired of it eventually, but he didn't. In fact, he started getting even bolder. One afternoon I caught him showing the driveway to some construction worker, pointing and measuring with a tape measure. When he saw me watching, he didn't even flinch. Just kept talking and pointing like I was invisible, like it was already decided and he was just handling the logistics. I went over and told him again that the land was mine and whatever he was planning he should just stop. He looked at me with this expression that I can only describe as amused tolerance, like a boss listening to an employee complain about something that's already been decided. "We will sort it out," he said, which was his way of saying, "I've already sorted it and you just don't know yet." Instead though, he escalated. Unfortunately, I had to go to Battambang, another city for some time to visit and take care of a relative who was sick together with my wife. When I got back, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The entire stretch of driveway along his property boundary, as well as part of my property, had been paved over with fresh asphalt. Brand new, smooth asphalt. Connected seamlessly to his own parking area in front of his big white house, and running right down the middle of what used to be my open driveway was a fence. Not some little garden fence, mind you, a real solid fence with concrete posts sunk into the ground. They had literally annexed a chunk of my driveway while I was away and turned it into part of their property. I sat on my motorbike staring at it for a solid 5 minutes. My brain kept trying to process what I was looking at. It was like coming home to find someone had moved your wall 3 meters into your living room and redecorated. I was told the work crew showed up the morning after I left and they told me that the neighbor hired them to improve his property. The neighbor told the work crew it is his land, so I went straight over and knocked on their door. The wife answered, holding one of those fancy iced coffee drinks. "You need to remove the asphalt and the fence," I said. "That is my land." She looked at me with zero concern and said, "My husband had the boundary confirmed. That section is ours. We improved it. You should be thanking us honestly. It looks much better now." "Show me the survey," I said. "Talk to my husband. He's in Phnom Penh until Friday." When the husband came back, I confronted him directly. Same thing though, he claimed he had the boundary verified. I asked by whom? Same answer, a friend, someone who knows about these things. No official documents, no government stamps. No nothing, essentially. I told him to remove everything or I would take action. He actually laughed and said, "What action? Go hire a lawyer? By the time anything happens, we've been using this driveway for years and it'll be ours by default." Now, here's the thing people outside Cambodia might not understand. The legal system here is, how do I put this politely, not fast. Property disputes can drag on for years. And by the way guys, true story. I mean, the legal system in general in this region here in Southeast Asia, in many countries, is quite problematic, and Cambodia is certainly no stranger to that. I remember years ago there were news reports that there are like super rich, I think Chinese people in some rich neighborhoods of Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, and these guys can do essentially whatever they want. I think a news reporter spotted a damn lion or a tiger walking around the neighborhood, and apparently that tiger or lion belonged to some Chinese businessman. And essentially, if you have money there, you are probably untouchable. Thankfully, Thailand, where I live, is not that bad, but there's certainly a lot of screwed up stuff going on as well. The local authorities are reluctant to get involved in neighbor conflicts, especially when one party has more money and connections than the other, and the husband knew this. He was banking on the idea that I couldn't afford to fight him, and that by the time anything got resolved, he would claim he had been using the land long enough for it to become his. And honestly, he was not entirely wrong about the legal timeline. I did go to the commune office and file a complaint. The commune chief came out, looked at the situation and basically told both of us to work it out between ourselves. When I pushed harder, he said he would look into it, which in Cambodia usually means it goes into a drawer somewhere and collects dust. I also went to the district land office. They told me it would take months to schedule an official survey, and even then enforcement would be another process entirely. The husband had clearly calculated all of this before he made his move. So there I was. A chunk of my driveway was gone, my access was narrower, and I couldn't turn the cattle truck properly anymore, and the legal system was moving at the speed of a sleeping water buffalo. My wife could see that I was furious. She told me something her grandmother used to say, which roughly translates to, "You don't fight a snake by chasing it, you make the ground it lives on unbearable." And that is when the plan started forming. And by the way, guys, as veterans of Reddit stories, if you would be in the position of this poor farmer, what would you do? Let me know in the comments, and if you still enjoy the farmer stories, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Also, let me know where you're watching from today. See, the thing about being a farmer is that you have access to certain resources that most people don't. Specifically, I had cattle, a lot of them, and cattle produce a lot of one particular thing that most people would rather not think about. That is manure. Now, composting is a completely normal and legitimate farming activity. Every farmer in Cambodia does it. You pile up manure, mix it with rice, straw and organic waste, and let it break down into fertilizer. It is how farming works, and it is legal. It is expected, and nobody can tell a farmer that he cannot compost on his own land. So I started composting aggressively. It was the middle of the hot season, which in Cambodia means temperatures over 40 degrees and humidity so thick you can taste it. Perfect conditions for what I had in mind. The heat speeds up decomposition and the humidity traps the smell. I won't lie, there was a part of me that wondered if I was taking this too far. What if he really does know people who can make problems for me? But then I would look at that fence sitting on my land and the doubt would disappear. The first pile went up right along the property boundary, on my land, as well as the part he claims he annexed, so his shiny new driveway with the beautiful asphalt. Completely on my land, I measured it myself about 4 meters back from the boundary just to be safe. A big, healthy pile of fresh cow manure mixed with rice, straw and whatever other organic waste I had from the farm. Now, fresh cow manure in tropical heat is something else entirely. This is not some mild country smell. In the Cambodian sun with humidity running at 90%, a fresh pile of cow manure produces a smell that can only be described as overwhelming. It hits you in waves, it gets into your clothes, your hair, your furniture if your windows are open. And it attracts flies like you wouldn't believe. Within 2 days, the wife was at my fence screaming at me. Just screaming, something about the smell being unbearable, about flies getting into their house and about how this was intentional and she was gonna report me. I was very calm though, very polite. I told her that I was simply composting agricultural waste on my own farm, which is what farmers do. I told her I was sorry if the smell bothered her, but this is a farming area and she chose to live next to a farm. "This is harassment," she yelled. "This is agriculture," I said. "If you have concerns, you're welcome to file a complaint with the commune." She stormed off. The husband showed up that evening, red in the face, sweat pouring down his neck. The smell was clearly getting to him already. "You need to move that pile," he said. "It is disgusting." "Well, you need to move that fence and asphalt," I replied. "It is on my land." "That has nothing to do with this." "It has everything to do with this. You took my driveway and I'm farming on my land. If you don't like the smells of a farm, maybe don't steal a farmer's property." He tried to threaten me, said he knew people, said he could make things difficult for me. I told him I wasn't doing anything illegal and he was welcome to call whoever he wanted. And that night I added a second pile, the same spot. Right next to the first one. Over the next 2 weeks I turned that entire strip of land along their boundary into what I can only describe as a manure wall. Pile after pile after pile, I had enough cattle to produce plenty of material, and I supplemented it with manure from 2 neighboring farms who were happy to let me haul theirs away for free. Farmers help each other around here. The smell was intense, I won't pretend it wasn't. It drifted across the whole area. Here's the thing though, I'm a farmer, I've been living with animal smells my whole life, it didn't really bother me, and my wife was not thrilled, but she understood what we were doing and she was fully on board. Actually, she did more than just support it, she started collecting all the vegetable scraps, fish bones and kitchen waste that she would normally throw out and just added it to the piles. Decomposing fish guts in the Cambodian heat is a smell I would not wish on anyone. She would carry the bucket out every evening, dump it on the nearest pile and walk back inside humming to herself. The city couple though? Well, they were dying. You could see it on their faces every time they stepped outside. The wife started wearing a scarf over her nose and mouth just to walk to her car. The husband would come out, get hit with the smell and go right back inside. Their big beautiful patio with the fancy tiles, completely unusable, covered in flies. They even filed a complaint with the local commune. The commune chief came out again, he walked up to my compost piles, looked at them, looked at me and said, "This is composting?" I said yes, agricultural composting for my rice fields. He looked at the city couple's house, then back at me, and his expression did not change at all. Commune officials in Cambodia are good at keeping their faces blank. He told them that composting is a protected agricultural activity and that there was nothing he could do about it as long as I was on my own land. He didn't take sides, but he also didn't tell me to stop. In Cambodia, sometimes that's the best you can hope for from the authorities. The husband lost it though, started yelling at the commune chief about corruption, about nobody doing their jobs, about how they paid good money for their property and they shouldn't have to live like this. The commune chief just walked away. He's dealt with worse. I kept adding to the piles and by the end of the first month the smell was legendary. People from the next village over could smell it on windy days. And the neighbors were a mix of amused and slightly annoyed, but most of them knew what the city couple had done with my driveway and most of them sided with me. A couple of older farmers actually brought extra manure over without me even asking. One guy who raises pigs showed up with 2 cartloads of waste from his pig pens and just winked at me as he unloaded it near the boundary. Pig waste is on a whole different level from cow manure when it comes to smell, and he knew exactly what he was doing. The city couple tried everything. They called the district health office, who came out and told them the same thing the commune chief did. Agricultural area, protected activity, nothing they could do. They tried calling the police, who showed up, smelled the air and asked what the actual emergency was, and the wife tried to explain that the smell was a form of assault. The officers looked at each other, looked at the compost and left. They even tried to get the provincial governor's office involved. Some minor official came out, walked around and asked me a few questions and then left. Nothing came of it. At one point the husband tried a different approach. He showed up at my door with an envelope and told me he was prepared to compensate me for the driveway section. He opened the envelope and fanned out a stack of cash like we were negotiating at a car dealership or something. The amount he offered was insulting though. It wouldn't have covered the cost of regrading the section he had destroyed, let alone the actual value of the land. "Take the money," he said. "This is more than fair, you're a farmer, this is probably more than you make in months." That comment right there told me everything I needed to know about how this man viewed me. Not as a neighbor, not as a person, as something beneath him that could be paid off with pocket change. I told him to keep his money and closed the door. The next day, I added the biggest pile yet. I'd been saving up material for a few days specifically for this moment. My oldest son helped me wheel it out in the cart and we stacked it right where the evening breeze would carry it straight into their bedroom windows. My son thought the whole situation was hilarious. He kept saying that we should name each pile and we ended up calling the biggest one the compensation. Meanwhile, their beautiful white house was becoming a misery box. The flies were everywhere, the smell had permeated everything. They could not open their windows, could not use their patio, couldn't have guests over without people gagging as they got out of their cars. The husband's face every morning when he left for whatever business trips he took was pure suffering. He would walk to his car with his shirt pulled up over his nose like a bank robber, jump in and speed off down the road. The wife started spending more and more time in Phnom Penh. At first it was just weekends and then it became weeks at a time. Their house would sit empty and dark while the flies buzzed around the patio and the smell settled into every crack and surface. I noticed the husband stopped coming over to threaten me after about 6 weeks. He just gave up talking to me entirely. He would see me in the driveway and look the other way. Gone was the confidence, gone was the attitude. He looked tired and defeated. Actually, I take that back. There was one more time he came to talk to me. He knocked on my door looking like a different person from the man who had laughed in my face months earlier. Eyes red, clothes wrinkled. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked desperate. "Please," he said, and I could tell it physically hurt him to say that word. "My wife won't come back to the house. She said it's unlivable. Our furniture smells. The tiles on the patio are stained. We cannot even sit in our own living room without gagging." I just stood there and let him talk. "We put everything we had into that house," he said. "This is destroying us. You have to stop." "Remove the fence and the asphalt," I said. "Then we can talk about stopping." His face changed. For a second I thought he might actually agree, but then his pride kicked in. "That land is ours," he said, but he said it weakly, like he didn't even believe it anymore. "Then the composting continues," I said, and I closed the door. About 3 months in, something interesting happened. An official surveyor came out, he measured everything and compared it to our land title. Now here's where my father's foresight saved me. Years ago he went through the trouble of getting our land registered as a hard title with the system, and we had the real thing, stamped and registered. It meant our boundaries were officially on file and couldn't be argued with. The result? Exactly what I already knew. The fence and asphalt were entirely on my property, not even close to the boundary. The city couple's friend who understands these things had been off by more than 3 meters. I added more piles and I started a second row of compost closer to their house, still on my property, but positioned so the prevailing winds would carry the smell directly into their living room. I also started letting the cattle graze right up along the boundary. Cows are messy and they do their business wherever they feel like it. And they felt like doing it right next to the city couple's fence pretty often. By the 5th month, the wife had essentially moved back to Phnom Penh full-time. The husband was only at the house a couple days a week. The beautiful white walls had a faint brown tinge from the dust and moisture in the air, mixing with, well, everything else. And then one morning I woke up to the sound of a work crew. I walked out to the driveway and watched as they pulled up the metal fence post, loaded the fence panels onto a truck, and started breaking up the asphalt with a small excavator. The husband was standing there watching them work, arms crossed, face like a stone. He didn't say a word to me, didn't acknowledge me at all, just stood there supervising the destruction of his own illegal construction. It took them several days to get everything off my land. When they were done, I had my full driveway back. It needed work though, the ground underneath was chewed up from the asphalt removal and the posts had left holes everywhere, but it was mine again. I spent the next week regrading the driveway and laying fresh gravel, and my wife helped me smooth it out. It looked better than it had in years. The city couple never recovered though. They eventually sold the house/property at a loss. I don't know the exact numbers, but the neighbors said they took a serious hit. They were right about the system being slow, but they were dead wrong about the farmer. Oh, and one more thing, my cattle have been especially productive lately, just in case anyone else gets any ideas about my driveway. And the next one is another malicious compliance story, which is titled, "Want your discount? Sure, okay." So I was working at a family-owned lumber yard about 10 years ago, and for some background, most of the prices for in-store items were set by our supplier and were a bit higher than local competitors, so if a sale was over $10, we would give them a 10% discount. The discount was entered in manually, and we would be pretty lenient with our regular, enjoyable customers. The $10 mark was merely a rough number. One of our regular pain-in-the-ass customers came in. He comes up to the counter with a couple of small items. Total came to like $5 or whatever. I gave him his total, he pays, and then looks over his receipt. Then he looks at me and says, "I get a 10% discount." I explained that the computer only allows it if the total is over $10. Total lie, but this guy is a known a-hole, so even at $9.99 he can have off. He says, "Oh, okay, then I'm going to keep shopping." I punch up a return for his already paid for items, give him his money back, and he keeps shopping. Comes back a few minutes later with a couple more items. I punch him up again, and now it comes out to $11 something. He gets his discount, he pays and checks his receipt. Then he says, "This item was a different price on the hook." So I go check, and sure enough, one of his items is 10 cents cheaper on the hook than what is scanned. The second item he purchased was hung right nearby, and I noticed that one was 30 cents more than what it scanned. I chose not to say anything right there. Returned those items and then rescanned them and edited the prices to match the hook prices. He's grinning ear to ear while I'm doing this. Then I look at him and tell him he owes me another 22 cents or so. He asks how, and I tell him that when I updated the prices, one item was cheaper and the other one was more expensive. He says, "Oh, okay," smiles, pays, doesn't check his receipt, and walks out the door. The guy spent an extra $5 to save $1. And yeah guys, thanks for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.